There we go. Let me go back up. Invite. How do I? How's this happen? Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
What? Let me see.
I can see you now.
Hey!
How you doing, sis?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic. I'm better now.
All right. How are you? Are you ready for the questions?
Oh, I'm ready. First of all, I just want to ask you: are you ready to take your shahada?
Oh, right
Because
now? Yeah.
come on, hold on. Because I'm saying, like, last time we talked, we were at Haraz. You were like, yeah, I just want to finish the whole Quran. And I was like, yeah, I've heard that one before.
It's true. I'm not done with it yet, and I'm like, no, I did. Like, it's a done deal.
Yeah. No, but I know I've heard that before. Like, I know when some people are like, no, they're ready. They're ready to come out of the oven. Just whenever you want, come on in. There's lots of space. Alhamdulillah. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, just let me know what your schedule is. So,
Inshallah. You know what? This week is actually kind of busy for me. Tomorrow I have a very important meeting. Well, two important meetings. Friday, I'm actually going to, right after Jummah, I'm going to be driving down to Carbondale. Saturday and Sunday, I'm going to be in
yeah, I saw that.
Carbondale. So, yeah, if anything, like I reached out to some people to see if they could help us out with this, but we'll see, inshallah. We'll see, hopefully, God willingly, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How is this? There's this thing with TikTok. I don't know why it's got me like it's got four boxes.
Yeah, I see that. So I don't know if it's like, hold on now.
Mm,
Maybe does it just make can for the people in the audience, does it are you seeing 4 slots or are you just seeing us 2?
showing grid. Okay, now I just messed it up even more. Hold on. Let me see. How does this even work, man?
You're close.
I'm the guy that doesn't know anything about technology, and I'm supposed to be the one that's figuring this out. I don't know, man.
Just go back to the 4 if you can. It still works.
All right, okay. I think we're just gonna have to settle with this.
Yeah, it's
Does anyone
fine.
know how to? If anyone knows how to do it, hit me up, please. Interact. I don't know, man. I don't know. Muted accounts, blocked accounts. Well, I don't know. You're gonna have to forgive me. I really suck with this kind of stuff.
They can see it's fine. They just need 2 little extra slots. It's fine.
Yeah. All right. I'm ready whenever you are, inshallah. Bismillah.
Whew, okay. You see on my
I
tabs
see
and
it. I see it.
everything?
I don't have
Listen.
that specific one, but I have the original version. This is the one. This is the first one that came out, so I got mine.
Ooh. All right. We're gonna jump straight into it because I have a question that's linked. I like one ayat is linked to something later that I wanted clarification on because we're gonna dig into. I want to ask some controversial questions that kind of
Bismillah.
came into my head as like a non-Muslim that I've since gotten understanding on my own, but I think the non-Muslims in the audience and everything have also asked these questions to themselves before. So I'd be interested to see what your view is on it. So Surah 3, the family of Imran or Ali Imran,
Ali Imran, yeah.
Ayah 18, God himself is a witness that there is no God worthy of worship except him, and so are the angels and people of knowledge. He is the maintainer of justice. There is no God worthy of worship except him, the Almighty, All-Wise. Pretty
شهد
self-explanatory.
الله أنه لا إله إلا هو والملائكة وَالنَّاسِ أَجْمَعِينَ. Okay, so I know the ayah. Okay, go on.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So that's pretty self-explanatory. He is God, so of course he knows he's the only God because he created everything. So he, of course, knows there's one and only him. Now, if we skip to Surah 4, women, or An-Nisa, and go to ayah 48, it speaks of like the unforgivable sin. So it says, indeed, God does not forgive associating others with him in worship, but forgives anything else of whoever he wills, and whoever associates other gods with him indeed committed a grave sin. So is this referring to, because of course he's God, he knows he's the only God, is this unforgivable sin referring to someone who has already discovered Islam and still chooses other gods above him? Because how then would a disbeliever or a non-Muslim know he's the only God?
Exactly. You hit it right. You hit it right on the head. You hammered the nail right on the head. MashaAllah. So that's the whole meaning of kufr. Kufr in Islam, in Arabic, means rejection. The cognate of it, the root word of it, is to cover up a seed with dirt, right? It basically comes from the word cover. Kafara means to cover over, right? So the term rejection is, once the truth has come to you, you still reject it and you cover over the truth with your falsehood. That is rejecting God, right? So someone that we don't believe in Islam, we don't believe that someone that doesn't know that God is one, we don't believe that they're going to be punished for that. You know what I mean? God certainly doesn't need to roast people that haven't gotten the memo. You know what I mean? But once you got the memo, once you got the message that God is one, from their belief, you know what I mean? And if you don't believe, that's at your own peril, you know? So shirk, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَن يُشْرَكَ بِهِ وَيَغْفِرُ مَا دُونَ ذَلِكَ لِمَن يَشَاءُ. God does not forgive anyone that associates with him, right? Meaning someone that says a human being is the son of God, or the angel is God, or God is three. And this is highlighted several times in the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَقُولُ اللَّهُ ثَالِثُ ثَلَاثَةٍ. Don't say that God is the Trinity, because, he's not. God is one. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ. God is, the all-powerful. لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ. He does not give birth, and he's not, he doesn't have any offspring.
Right.
وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. And he has nothing that is equal to him in might or anything. So, and one companion of the Prophet ﷺ, he asked the Prophet, he's like, أَيُّ ذَنْبٌ أَعْظَمُ? What is the biggest sin that a human being can do? And he says, أَن تَجْعَلَ لِلَّهِ نِدًّا وَهُوَ قَدْ خَلَقَهُ, is that you place a partner to God or an equal to God when he was the only one who has created you, right? In other words, like, let me give you an example. It's one thing to kind of like talk about it because we don't really understand, this kind of divine decree. Let's just say, you have a kid and you're raising your kid and you're there for them and you love them and you nurture them and you protect them and you see them throughout life. And after all of that, they trade you up for someone else and be like, that's my mother. It hurts, right? It's the same kind of thing here. He was the one who created you. He was the one who created your ancestors. He was the one who created all of this life for you, all this provision, your sight, all of these blessings that we can never enumerate. And you're associating with him creation. You know what I mean? And it doesn't just have to be a human being. It doesn't have to just be an angel. Anything that is other than God is created by God. So associating with God could be like what people do is like, they hold on to crystals and they think that it has like meaning, or people they look at the planets and they think that this is going to have like some sort of effect on their future or on their life or something like that, like zodiac signs and things like that. That's all association with God. So again, if you didn't know that this kind of stuff is punishable and it's not forgiven, right? And then you're like, wait, hang on a second. So what I was doing was wrong. You ask God to forgive you, he forgives you because he knows that you're sincere with it. right? He knows that you're real with it. But on the other hand, once you know that God is one and you still choose to do that, God does not forgive that. Right? That's a big problem. Yeah.
Because I do know, and I too am guilty, I guess, prior to knowing this, of doing the whole zodiac thing. Like, I'm an Aries. I don't know what to tell you, but but I've known quite a few people that do that, but associate, like, not associated with God as in like replacing God, but believe in that as a creation of God. Like, God purposefully made the planets this way, or God purposefully put the crystals on the earth to assist humans with this and this and this. So what about in that scenario where it's not necessarily them thinking that they're replacing God? They still believe there is a one God, but believe that because God created these things, there's some truth to it.
These are all things that's basically, there's something. So let's take it step by step, okay? Mm-hmm. So there's this thing talking about the planets, for example. Let's dive into that for a sec. In the planets, in astrophysics, there's this thing called the anthropic principle, right? Which means that everything in the universe was created just to sustain life on this planet, right? So the reason Jupiter is there, the reason Jupiter has that huge hurricane that's never ending, you know what I mean? That serves as a vacuum for all these asteroids that was headed towards Earth and so on and so forth. The reason that we have that moon and where it is, when we look at it and it's full of craters, that's all stuff that, you know, took a lot of like space debris and space dust and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Everything was created to sustain life on this planet, right? So that you could exist in this funny little corner of the universe. This is a real thing. This is only something that they're only coming up with now. And This is also highlighted in the Quran, you know, where God says, you know, أَفَلَمْ يَنظُرُونَ إِلَى الْأُفُقِ, like they're going to, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْأُفُقِ. We're going to show them our signs and our miracles on the horizons. Like when we look at the horizon, we see, like, you know, heaven and earth colliding. You know what I mean? You're just like sitting there contemplating. That's a sign of God. It's like, so that I could exist in this funny little corner in this little, you know, speck of time, this little echo of time, right? So these things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sakhara lakum al-jibala, that God had created all of these things so that you could benefit from them. It's not so that you could worship them. You know what I mean? So say you give your child a home and everything like that so that they could be benefiting from it. You know what I mean? Clean your room, you get candy, you get whatever, right? And they benefit from it. And then suddenly they start finding their solace in the candy and not you, right?
Right.
So that's a form of association with God. Likewise, all of these things everything that was created for a purpose. It's not so that we could find that as our Lord. That is not. We don't worship that. We don't worship a human being. We don't worship, no matter what the miracles are. The reason that messengers and prophets have these miracles is so that you know, people could recognize that this is a person that's coming from the divine, right? Without these miracles, then they wouldn't be able to win a lot of people's hearts. You know what I mean? So. Yeah, and God even highlights that. So, for example, if you are gonna, you know, if hypothetically speaking, someone is gonna worship something that's gonna benefit you. Saturn isn't gonna benefit you. Jupiter isn't gonna benefit you in any way. You know what I mean? The sun isn't gonna benefit you in any way, right? I mean, yes, it does sustain life and stuff like that. There's all this, you know, vitamins that comes from all this kind of stuff. That's understandable, but it's not like that's your God. You know what I mean? Because that's going to explode. That's going to swallow up Mercury. It's going to swallow up the moon, and it's going to swallow up Earth, and then, you know, the whole universe is going to be rolled up into scrolls, right? And that's, again, back into astrophysics. This is what you know, astrophysics call the big crunch. You know, is that everything's going to be rolled up like scrolls. So I hope that answers the question. Does it make sense? If not, I can actually explain more.
It absolutely answered the question, and what you said earlier brought me to Surah 5, the spread table, or Al-Ma'idah?
Al-Ma'idah, yeah.
Al-Ma'idah?
Basically explaining the Last Supper of Jesus.
Right. And Ayah 17 says, indeed, those who say God is the Messiah, son of Mary, have fallen into disbelief. Say, O prophet, who has the power to prevent God if he chose to destroy the Messiah, son of Mary, his mother, and everyone in the world altogether. To God alone belongs the kingdom of heavens and the earth and everything in between. He creates whatever he wills, and God is the most capable of everything. So that is an excellent point, because I, like many people in the U.S., even if you aren't religious, you're sort of indoctrinated with Christian belief. So you grow up to understand that Jesus is a manifestation of God, or God is the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost all at once. But I do like how this points out, well, if Jesus was God, why then would Jesus destroyed, or God destroyed Jesus? So that doesn't make any sense. And even
why would Jesus destroy himself?
Right, exactly. Why would Jesus destroy himself? And even the Bible proves that Jesus was not God himself, because Jesus, before dying, said to God, Father, to you I commend my spirit. Like, if Jesus was God, why would Jesus commend his spirit to himself? So that I did find interesting. It just backed up what you were saying earlier.
Yeah, and there's lots of these verses that kind of that really just back up exactly what you said. Like in Allah, God would not give a human being knowledge and wisdom and get people to follow him. Then he would say, "Worship me other than God." You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Worship God. God gave you wisdom. Wisdom is being able to articulate right from wrong. Right? And so once you got people to follow you and believe in you as the messenger of God, now he says, "Worship me and my mom." How does that make any sense?
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah.
So that's an excellent point. This next one's going to be a bit controversial, but keep in mind, this is all in the spirit of, people who may not know about Islam, or may have been raised in a different religion, or have been non-believers, have been known to ask questions like this. So it's just, kind of putting it to the test.
No judgments here. No judgments here. You're asking, yeah.
So, what I find interesting is the whole idea of free choice. So in Hud, Surah 11, for those following along, 118, it says, had your Lord so willed, he would have certainly made humanity one single community of believers, but they will always choose to differ, except those shown mercy by your Lord, and so he created them to choose freely. And so the word of your Lord will be fulfilled. I will surely fill up hell with jinn and humans altogether. Now, many people ask this question, that if God could make a community of nothing but believers, if God has the choice of making it so that everyone could earn heaven, why would God instead choose human suffering, or instead give free choice in that particular area for humans to choose?
Your questions, each one is more beautiful than the last, honestly. I love these. Okay, so to answer the first part of your question, if God could create a human being, or could create this being that does not disobey God in any fashion, and everything is perfect. First of all, let me ask you, do you think that that's something that's difficult for God?
Well, no. It says, he could do that if he so willed.
Mm-hmm. Case in point is angels.
Mm-hmm.
Angels are created from light. and they are created. لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم ويفعلون ما يؤمرون. They don't disobey God in any fashion, and they do exactly what they're told. Meaning, they are, they're perfect. They're perfect beings. You know what I
Right.
mean? Human beings. So they don't have that free will to disobey God. They're not furnished like that. Had God wanted to create the human being and to create the jinn, the celestial beings, these other, the demons. That's what they are, demons, right? Because they're created from fire, we're created from clay. Had God wanted to create us like he created the angels, he would have done that. But that's not what God wanted, right? So there's this verse in Surah Al-Baqarah where the angels ask God. I'm just going to put this aside. I'm just going to go from memory. There's this verse in Surah Al-Baqarah. There's this chapter in Surah Al-Baqarah, the cow or the heifer, where the angels, where God says to the angels, "Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa." I am going to place this new leader, this new sovereign on earth. Now, a khalifa usually means that someone is coming to take over, right? It means that someone is coming after this, like a supervisor or like a substitute teacher or something like that. You know what I mean? So that means that the jinn were here before us, right? The angels ask God, "We're not going against you, yo. Oh God, we're just trying to figure out what this means. Like, what's the wisdom behind it?" قالوا أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك. They're like, are you going to place on earth one that is going to shed blood and corrupt on earth? In other words, we already had this trial run with the jinn. We've seen them corrupt. We've seen them shed blood. We had to punish them. We had to take them to these oceans. We had to really, we had our work cut out for us, right? And now you're saying that you're going to create another being that is like this jinn, that's going to have free will, that's going to shed blood and corrupt, because that's their frame of reference, right? God says, "Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamun." I know what you don't know. They said, we just want to understand the wisdom behind it. We're not going against you. In other words, if you want this creation to worship you, we'll worship you, oh God. Like, and we'll do it even better than the jinn. We'll do it better than this new creation, right? We'll worship you. We just don't want to see any more of this bloodshed. We don't want to see any more of this corruption, all of this fasad. What is the wisdom behind it? And then he says, "Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamun." I know what you don't know. That verse is so beautiful to me. When someone says, "Listen, I got this," you know what I mean? It means that they know something that you don't, and they know that letting things happen as they're going to happen is better for everyone else. And this means that God knew that from the children of Adam, from this new creation that's going to be on this earth, there's going to be honest people. There's going to be truthful people. There's going to be those that are martyrs. There's going to be messengers. There's going to be those that are going to stand up for right and forbid what's wrong, right? Now, this is what the free will is. Angels, they don't have that free will. Human beings have that free will. And by the fact that we are choosing to worship God and fast for God and give in the way of God and spread knowledge and come together for God, that means that we're doing it out of our own free will. That's what makes us above the angels, because we're doing it by our own choice, right? However, if we choose not to, if we choose to reject all of that, if we choose to, out of our own free will, I know all the answers, like all of the answers are right here. You know what I mean? God gave you this how-to book. How do you succeed in this world and in the next? You know what I mean?
Right.
He gave you all the answers. He told you how do you write your name. He told you everything, right? This is how you succeed. And you still say, "I don't want to do this." You got to be some special type of ignorant to reject all of this and be like, "No, I don't want this." This is, you're doing that out of your own free will. It's not, لا يضركم من ضل إذا اهتديتم. You're not going to be affected by the ones that are going astray if you yourself are upright, right? If you yourself are good with God, you're not going to be affected by those who are going astray. So the people that chose to reject God, that's what makes them worse than beasts. That's what makes them worse than demons, essentially, right? So, إِنَّهُمْ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ. These people are like these animals that graze, like, cows and chickens and things like that, but they're even worse off because animals know why they were created, right? But
Right.
for you to go about life not knowing what the meaning is of life and I don't care, there's no purpose and blah, 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 you're even worse off than these animals, is what God says. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you're just existing, you know? Now, the whole idea of free will is, you mentioned before we get to that. I'm trying to remember the questions that you asked, like from memory. Um, you mentioned about you would earn paradise. Paradise is never earned. Paradise is never earned. We enter paradise out of the mercy of God, right? There's this one story of a man that all he did his entire life was worship God, always praying, praying, praying constantly for like 500 years, right? That's his whole thing. And, on Judgment Day, he was told, enter my paradise out of my mercy. And he says, wait, hold up. And he says, what? And he's like, I don't want to enter out of your mercy. I want to enter out of my deeds. Like, he thought that his worshiping his entire life was going to get him into paradise. So you know what God said? Okay, take him to the fire. You think you're going to enter the paradise because of your actions? That's not going to get you there. And that's what God says. This is when we enter paradise, hopefully we're written as the people of paradise, and may God ward off from us the punishment of the fire. Is ادخلوا الجنة بما صبرتم ادخلوا الجنة بما كنتم تعملون ادخلوا الجنة بما like enter paradise as a result. Bima, that was sababiyya. It's like the as a result of the patience you had displayed. Because you were patient in this world with all of these trials, all of these calamities, bima, as a result of your patience, now enter paradise, right? Not out of your actions, because of your patience. Enter paradise as a result of what you did, right? And this doesn't have to do with any of that. It's the actions that we do that draws us closer to God, right? And that's what enters us into his mercy, and that's what enters us into his paradise. Enter into my servitude and enter into my paradise. Right? So that's what that means.
What would you say to believers who are equating God, because the whole test for all of us is whether or not we're going to submit to God, of whether we can submit.
Your microphone stopped for a second. I can't hear you. Can you guys hear her?
Yeah, I think somebody called me. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah. So last thing I heard was,
okay.
What would you say to the believers?
Had to call me in the middle of it. Sorry.
All good.
Yeah. What about the disbelievers who argue that it's an ego thing, or God is on an ego trip, because why would he, if he's the creator of everything, and everything is because of him, why would he need people to choose him? Like, what is the reasoning behind that?
That's a very beautiful question. First of all, I find it very intriguing that people that have this kind of bone to pick with God, as if God is a criminal on trial. I think I always find that very, very intriguing, and I find this very, very prevalent with atheists. Atheists, and I've said it once, I'll say it 1,000 times. I've never met an atheist that is not serious about God. I've never came across one that is not serious about God. So they must have had some sort of things that kind of, that they just, it's very obvious that they have work to do, because the human being naturally, by their fitrah, by their natural state, has to submit to something. You have to. You know what I mean? You have to submit to something. You submit to your stomach. Don't tell me, oh, I don't submit to anything. I'm not a slave to anything. You're a slave to your desires. That's between your thighs. You're a slave to your, the music you listen to. You're a slave to eating whatever you can eat. All of these things is part of the natural human condition, right? So they would want to be slaves to this kind of stuff, but they would not want to be slaves to God. They're just kind of finding this. I feel like this has a lot to do with the devil trying to get into their head and be like, oh no, you don't need God. No, it's okay. You came from monkeys. You came from apes. There's evolution. You came from apes. You'd rather be related to an ape and not a human being. Like, yeah, you know what I mean? It's just kind of this kind of something that's funny. But anyhow, what would I say to them? I would say I just wish you I just wish you best. I just wish you the best, man. Honestly, we want there's lots of room. There's this one story of one of my teachers is Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, very well known. You might know him, but he's the president of Zaytuna College in California. And he tells a story about one of his friends. His name is Guy Eaton. He's a great philosopher, and he moves in to this neighborhood, and he has a friend of it. Like, his neighbor was an avid British gardener, and they meet each other, and he says, he's like, what do you do? He says, I'm a theologian. To which the gardener replied, oh, I'm an atheist. And he says, oh, okay, so I guess you've read Sir Thomas Aquinas on God. No. What about William of Norwich, Avicenna, Ghazali, Razes? No. What about some of the modern? So he starts listing all of these philosophers that talk about atheism and stuff like that. Don't know them either. Don't know this guy. Don't know that guy. What about some of the moderns? William Craig, and so don't know them. He's like, sir, you're not an atheist. You're just an ignorant person. So really, just the anecdote really does highlight that it stems from ignorance. Now, this whole idea of the God complex. I'm going to bring in this idea because I love the idea of children. You know what I mean? Because children are innocent by their nature. Again, say you were to do all this stuff for your child. You try to warn them, don't talk to strangers, look both ways before you cross the street and stuff like that. And, you know what I mean? All of this. And then they go out and they do exactly opposite of what you tell them. That's that it hurts you. You know what I mean? It's because my child is not doing what I told them to do. My child is not, going under my protection. My child is deliberately going against what I asked them to. Right? However, on the other hand, if your child does listen and respond to you, no, I can't talk to strangers. No, I'm going to come home right after school. No, I'm going to do all of this. And then after all of that, they're going to say, Mom, thank you. Right? Does your heart lean towards them? Mm-hmm. You see? It's the same kind of thing. God doesn't need us to worship him. God doesn't need our praise. God doesn't, when we say Alhamdulillah, all praise is due to God, it means we're just basically tossing a little teardrop in a vast gushing ocean. You know what I mean? It's not doing anything for God. All praise is all right. It already belongs to God, whether we praise him or not. Right? Mm-hmm. All gratitude already belongs to him, whether we are grateful to him or not. But the more we gratify him, the more we send our salutations to the Prophet, the more we are glorifying him, the more elevated we are because we're recognizing God's majesty. We're recognizing his might and his strength and all of this stuff that he's created. And when we look at all of these things that God has created, these trees that go red and then yellow and then, and then it's dead. And then you have these 4 seasons, right? And then we look at that, we just contemplate and we say, SubhanAllah, how glorious is God? He didn't create this for no reason. You know what I mean? These trees are around to give us oxygen. You know what I mean? When we breathe out, the trees breathe in, right? And when the trees breathe out, we breathe in. You know what I mean? So everything is there for this divine purpose. Likewise, all of these beautiful creatures, all these beautiful animals, whales. Like you think that God does? You think that? In other words, it's like you think you're so special. You think you were created to just eat and drink and then sleep and then that's it? That's the end of your life? No, God basically shows us within these creatures that he's created is I have things that could do that much better than you. You think you have strength? Look at this rhinoceros, right? You think you have size? Look at this elephant. You think you have aggression? Look at this lion. And they do it so much better than you, by the way. You know what I mean? So it's إن في ذلك لعبرة لأولي الأبصار. And God says this is all an example for the people that really contemplate. Yesterday, I caught a bit of your live stream. You were talking about Surah Al-Nahl, right? The chapter of the bees. Yes. I love that chapter. I know I'm calling on.
It's one of my favorites now.
It's beautiful. It's our scholars. They nicknamed it Surah Al-Naam. Like they nicknamed it the chapter of blessings because it really highlights the blessing of God. Right? You came across this verse that really, I think it really did change my life. Is when you were saying about how from between blood and filth comes pure milk, right? Pure milk for لذة للشاربين. And I was actually in Portugal when I really I had memorized that from way before, but when I was in the islands in Portugal when I was listening to it while I was looking at the cow staring at me and it was chewing. I saw it see me see it. And I was like thinking to myself, subhanallah. I was like, this is, from between filth and between blood is pure milk. Like you can literally drink it right from the udder of the cow. You know what I mean? And then God says that is a sign. Just the fact that you're looking at that is a sign for the people that really want to contemplate. So the people that want to think that God is a criminal on trial, the people that think that God has this God complex, or say, yes, he is God. He deserves it. You know what I mean? He was the one who created us, right? Mm-hmm. He's the one that deserves to be worshipped, right? To not submit, that's out of your own arrogance. That's just choosing to be blinded. That's تحمل عمي على الهدى. They had chosen to be blinded instead of guided. So I hope that answers the question.
It did very beautifully, by the way. It did answer my question. That was a beautiful explanation. The bees, so right now, I would say bees and Yusuf are tied for me as far as my favorite surah so far.
Oh, okay.
So what was in bees where I was just, because the freedom of choice comes up in bees again, but what did I'm trying to go after because you have been reading my mind. Like you've been going through certain questions I already had and answering them while we go.
MashaAllah.
Ooh, this we touched upon in the coffee shop, actually. It's still Surah 5, Ayah 32. That is why 32? We ordained for the children of Israel that whoever takes the life, unless as a punishment for murder or mischief in the land, it will be as if they killed all of humanity. And whoever saves a life, it will be as if they saved all of humanity. Although our messengers already came to them with clear proofs, many of them still transgressed afterwards through the land. I didn't really have a question about that. It just really reminded me of what's going on in Palestine right now.
وكذلك كتبنا على بني إسرائيل أنه من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا. We have prescribed, this is basically right after God highlights the story of Cain and Abel, of Qabil and Habib, right? Cain and Abel, I don't know if you know the story. Yeah. So one of them, he got very jealous of the other. I'm going to kill you. And then he's like, if you're going to extend your hand to kill me, I'm not going to do that, because God only accepts this. He only accepts from the people of piety, right? So he did. So that's basically, and it's amazing that God really highlights that point is at the time of Adam, because at the time of Adam, there's barely any human beings. It's not the 7-8 billion people that we have today. Mm-hmm. They were populating the earth at that time. So to take out one human being is to make sure that to give us that, exemplar that you're taking out all of humanity. it's very obvious what that means. You know what I mean? To take out a soul, you know. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, لا يزال أحدكم يكون مع ربه فسحة. Like, you will always have wiggle room with God as long as you haven't shed blood. As long as you haven't taken a life, you'll always have wiggle room with God. But once you've taken life, the enormity of that is just immeasurable with God. You know what I mean? It is so strong. So, and that's what God is highlighting right there to the children of Israel of what's going on. Like, hey, take out one innocent life. Life is sanctimonious. God says, لا تقتلوا أنفسكم ولا تقتلوا النفس التي حرم الله. Don't take your own life, and don't take the life that God has sanctified. Don't kill the innocent lives that God has sanctified. You know what I mean? It is such a big thing because God was the one who placed that soul in this body. God was the one who put this thing here. And if you're doing that to corrupt on the life, oh my God, you're in big trouble with God. It's a very big deal.
As you should be in trouble. That's just.
Yeah.
Let me see. Bear with me, y'all. I have, as you can see, I have all of these.
Take your time with it. Take your time with
going
it.
through. But let's see. That one.
I'm just looking at the comments going through, so take your time. This is actually making me really happy.
Did you see how many are in the live right now?
Yeah, mashallah, 7.5 thousand. That's a whole stadium.
It is.
I'm gonna start beatboxing or doing something to keep them entertained.
I know. I feel like I should be doing a jig or something. But
yeah.
I want to discuss. So after the bees, we went straight into the night journey last night, Al-Isra, which is also one of my favorites. The ayah that popped out to me the most out of this entire surah was 49, 49 to 52. And they say, mockingly, when we are reduced to bones and ashes, will we really be raised as a new creation? And say, O prophet, yes, even if you become stones or iron or whatever you think is harder to bring to life, then they will ask you, who will bring us back to life? Say, the one who created you the first time. Mm-hmm. That last night I stopped reading right after I read that passage, because that I thought was so incredibly powerful, because the prophet, peace be upon him, was basically saying, choose anything you could possibly imagine. Choose the most difficult thing. That's what God is capable of. And when they were asking for proof or how this was going to happen, the exact way you were even created. Like, how did that happen? So I just wanted your thoughts on that, because you're the way you explain things are just, I just loved it. So I highlighted that on purpose because I could not wait to bring that one to the live.
Nice, yeah, yeah. It's to create something the first time. Do you think that's very difficult for God? For us to make something out of nothing, what I mean? Like if we have like a block of, for example, if we're just if we're just going to give an example, if we have like a block of wood or a block of rock and we're going to shape it into something, for us it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort, right? That's something very easy with God, right? The only thing that God has to do is just say be, and it is. You know what I mean? He just speaks it into existence and it happens. You know what I mean? So something that we might think is very difficult for us, to God is, to God is very simple. It's very easy. So what's more difficult, to create something out of nothing or to bring something back to life? Right? What's more difficult, to create a body or to have the body wake up? Right? So
That's a whole word. That was a whole word. Okay. Did y'all hear that?
yeah.
That was
So it's like, because
okay.
that's why, sleep is, that's why they say sleep is a little bit brother of death, right? So, and yes, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's, this is God's word. I'm just going to put it down. I'm really just going to go based off of, my own, what I know, inshallah. So, it's not difficult for God at all. There's this one beautiful hadith of a man that is cremated. He's never done anything good in his entire life. And he knows God exists, and he knows that there's going to be a day of judgment. And he's never done anything good before. So he tells his kids, when I die, I want you to cremate my body. Half of the ashes, I want you to put it in the wilderness, scattered it anywhere in the wilderness, and the other half spread in the oceans. That way, there's no way God can bring me back to life. That way, I'm not going to have any judgments, and this is it. Of course, Judgment Day comes, and God gathers this person, his ashes, in the wilderness and in the oceans. Like, that's not difficult for God. We're all in His kingdom. We're all in His world. It's nothing is hard for Him, right? So He gathers him and He brings him back to life, and He says, "Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? Why'd you tell them to burn your body, cremate your body, half of it in the wilderness, half of it in the ocean?" And He says, "Oh God, I knew that I've never done anything good." And he's like, I was afraid of your punishment. I didn't want your punishment. So just the fact that he was so terrified of God's punishment, he knew God exists. He's never done anything good before. Just because he knew God's mercy, just because he knew God's wrath, God enters him into paradise.
Oh, that's a good story. That is a good story. Which hadith was that?
Pardon?
You said that's from a hadith?
That's a hadith, yeah. There's lots of hadith that highlight that. There's lots of hadith that highlight that. Now, the reason I don't want to say too much of these kind of hadith, because I don't want people to use that as a cop out with God. You know what I mean? People sometimes they like to, yeah. But yeah, no, that is a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's another beautiful hadith where a man came mockingly to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and he had like dead and decaying bones, right? And in the desert, like, bones are they're very easy to turn into dust. So he's making fun of him, and he's like, "Atazamu ya Muhammad anna Allah, are you seriously claiming that God is going to bring this dead and decaying bones back to life?" Right? God responds to him right away. Like, revelation comes down right then. وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم. God is talking about this man that's coming to the Prophet, saying, who's going to bring this dead and decaying bones? Say, O Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the one who brought it to life the first place. قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة. Tell him the one that's going to bring this dead and decaying bones to life is the one who gave it life in the first place. And he's all knowledgeable of all life. All of the life, all of the breaths that you and I take, every human being is going to take. Every amount of blood that our heart is pumping, right? How many breaths we take in, how many breaths we take out. Sometimes people, if we take a breath in, we don't breathe out, khalas, that's the end of our life. That's the end of our affair in this world. You know what I mean? So, قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم الأرض الشجرة. So he's the same one that has created all of these creations, the trees, and the fire that you start up, with all of these trees and stuff like that. الذي أنتم منه توقدون. That's the one that's going to bring it back to life, right? In other words, did you really think that it's that difficult? There's another verse, where it's not a verse well, it is a verse. There's verses and there's ahadith, but there's this other example I'll say, where God says, "Sanaftu ala afwahihim," we will place a seal upon their mouths on Judgment Day. This is a scene that's going to happen on the Day of Judgment. God is going to place a seal on our mouths, and our hands are going to testify, and our feet are going to testify, our eyes are going to testify, our ears are going to testify, because our limbs know what's coming. They don't want to press a button and destroy cities, right? Our eyes don't want to see something that is, nobody should see. You know what I mean? Our ears don't want to hear filthy words, and so on and so forth, right? And so they asked the Prophet, how can the hands speak? How can the hands speak? And he said the same one that made the tongue speak is going to make the hand speak in the next life. In other words, like, why is that so difficult for you to understand? Why is that so difficult for you to comprehend? Everything is easy with God, So we're just gonna have to explain ourselves. But the thing is, we can't on Judgment Day. There's no lying. There's no messing around with God.
Speaking of Judgment Day, there have been quite a few people just in these times that are convinced that these are the end of times. And I found that interesting because I was in one of your lives and you got that question. And someone asked, do you think these are the end times? And you said, yes. Expound upon that.
Absolutely, we're in the end of time. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind or any scholar. I'm not claiming myself as a scholar, but there's no doubt in my mind, as someone that's been in religion for a very long time, and any other scholar, that these are the end of times. There are signs that messengers have came with, so that we could recognize them. For example, like there's so many small signs. For example, the days will become very fast. You know what I mean? That's a sign of the end of times. It's like a day will feel like a year, will feel like a month will feel like a week will feel like a day will feel like an hour, right? We just had COVID not too long ago, 3 years ago. You know what I mean? It was so long ago, but it feels like it just happened yesterday.
Yes.
Right? The days are going by really quick. That's a sign of the end of times. Another sign of the end of times is, for example, is the earth is gonna start rotating. The sun is gonna rise from the west. That's one of the biggest signs of the end of times. Once that happens, no prayer is gonna be accepted anymore. If you haven't repented, you're done. You know what I mean? Like, there's no more repentance that you could do once that happens. Once the sun rises from the west. This right here, this is a sign of the end of times. The Prophet said that people's tribulations, people's trials, human strife is going to be exposed to the people's hearts like a mat, like a matrix. You know what I mean? Here, doesn't that look like a mat? Doesn't it look like a mat? Doesn't it look like, a carpet that you put on the ground? And we're watching these things. We're literally passively drinking it in. And that's exactly what he said. أيما قلب أشربها نقطت فيه نقطة سوداء وأيما قلب أنكرها نقطت فيه نقطة بيضاء. Any heart that is constantly drinking these tribulations in, a black dot appears on the heart. And this is in the spiritual sense. And any heart that is constantly rejecting, a white dot appears on the heart until there's only going to be two hearts. One, aswad murbadan, mujakhi and kitkus mujakhi. Like, it is completely pitch black. It won't know good and it won't reject evil. And pure white. Pure white. So this is a sign of the end of times. All this, bloodshed and corruption, that's a sign of the end of times. Harj, harj is like people will become like animals. Like, we're about to go into Christmas now. People are literally, they're going to be trampling all over each other for things that they don't even need. There's going to be lots of police everywhere. You know what I mean? That's a sign of the end of times. And it's very obvious. It's not just in one place in the world, it's everywhere. I mean, we live in Chicago, we see how much, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? We see
Yeah.
how much police there is. Um, that's another sign of the end of times. Another sign of the end is Mecca, right there. You know what I mean? I drew that because I wanted to remember Mecca as I remember it before all of the tall buildings, right? So when I used to live in Mecca, that's exactly how it was.
What do you mean you drew that? What do you mean, sir? You drew that
I drew that.
with your
Yeah,
own hands?
yeah, with my hands.
What are
If
you
it goes happen, hang on a
That's
second.
amazing.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's what
drew
I
it.
was telling y'all when I tell you that
Look at it.
he is one of the most humble human beings I've ever met. This is a perfect example. Like he'll talk about these phenomenal things that he's done, but he talks about it in passing, like, oh yeah, that's why I drew that over there. And this is quite literally a work of art. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's not a big deal. I mean, because the way we're taught to do things is like once we perfect something, we belittle it and we put it behind us. You know what I mean? We don't dwell on it. We don't think about it too much. But nevertheless, I mean, I appreciate the kind words. But when I used to live there, when I used to live in Mecca, that's how it was. There wasn't any of these tall, huge buildings that were around it, right? One of the signs is that إذا أظلت الساعة على مكة, like when you see the hour casting its shadow over Mecca, right? A lot of people didn't understand what that meant. If you're looking at Mecca right now, if you go search up the Kaaba right now, if you look at the Kaaba right now, you'll literally see the clock tower. And there's, like wherever the sun is, it's literally casting a shade over the Kaaba. How did he know that? How did he know that? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That the hour is literally casting a shadow over it. إذا رأيتم مكة بعجت قضائنا, like when you see Mecca full of tunnels, full of holes, right? And you see there's like, again, when I used to live there, there's lots of these tunnels that you could go through the mountains and stuff like that. بعجت is like to have holes in it, that's a sign. When you see these desert Arabs, like, the Bedouins, when you see these desert Arabs, يتطاولون في البنيان, they are competing in who has the higher tower. You go to Qatar, you go to Dubai, you go to Saudi Arabia, all these big projects, Burj Al Arab, Burj Khalifa, Burj so and so. They're literally half of them are they're almost up to Mercury now. I don't even, they're so high up there. That's a sign of the end of times. Another sign is أن يكون المطر غيثا ويكون الولد غيثا. You will see rain be burning or like acidic, like acid rain, and you will see children filled with rage. I work with cars. I mean, working with exotic cars, sometimes when it rains on the cars, it literally burns through the clear coat of the car itself. You know what I mean? And this is all pollution of the human being, like all this pollution that happens in the sky, and then it rains down. That's a sign of the end of times. There's so many. You'll see people that are fully naked, kasiyatun ariyat. You'll see people that are fully naked and fully dressed at the same time, right? I don't think I have to explain that one. We just see these people that are in the gyms with these tights, whatever, and it's just disgusting. That's a sign of the end of times. He said that there's going to be a lot of people born out of wedlock. There's going to be a lot of children that they're not going to know who their parents are and stuff like that. There's quite a bit of signs of the end of times, and as far as I'm concerned, they're all there. It's clear as the sun. Someone mentioned the Euphrates River. That's also a sign of the end of times. That when the Euphrates River dries up, it's like the hour is very near. The moment is very near.
Did it
Yes,
dry
the
up?
algae. That's also
Did I miss
a sign.
that?
Pardon?
Did it dry up? Did the Euphrates River dry up already?
It's dried up. It's almost there. It's almost there. It's pretty much it's pretty much gone. It's pretty much evaporated. He said that there's going to be. He said that there's going to be ta'amur al-nisa. like this whole women's movement of like women have this, they feel like they're more superior in a sense. Like this is a sign of the end of times as well. So we have this whole, women's rights, this, women's right, that, yeah, feminism is what they call it. Now, what I mean by feminism, I don't mean like the Western idea of feminism. The Western idea of feminism is what he's talking about. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
There's no religion, take it from me, and I say this with amnesty and respect. There's no religion that respects the woman more than Islam. I've studied religions. I've
Mhm.
seen what they say about women, and it's kind of like, oh my God, you guys are calling us barbaric. Wow.
Right.
So, yeah, so that's another sign of the end of times. There's just quite a bit, to be honest with you. Wildfires is a sign of the end of times. We see that everywhere. كثرة الفيضانات, like there's going to be lots of floods. كثرة الزلازل, we'll see a lot of earthquakes that are going to happen. And I think that's very obvious. Like there's all these earthquakes that are happening all over the place, especially in the east right now. Yeah, there's going to be a mountain of gold that's going to be discovered, which they already have. They've already discovered it. A mountain of gold that's underground. So, yeah.
How have you memorized all these signs? these are at least 1,000 signs. Like, how did you remember them? But and I did find because the other ones made sense, or the other ones, as far as like a moment in time. I gotta be honest, it's like a new, well, not a revert yet, I should say, but like as someone who's new to Islam, why would feminism be considered one? Or Western fit, like what is considered evil about Western feminism, or haram about Western feminism? Like why that idea of feminism specifically would be considered like an end of time sign?
Women in Islam, the word for woman in Islam is the word hurma. Hurma or haram in Arabic, it has two meanings. One, absolutely forbidden by God, or two, sanctified. Right? So, for example, this mosque in Mecca is known as Masjidul Haram, the sanctified mosque. Right? Ash-Shahr al-Haram, for example, the sanctified month of Ramadan, right? Ash-Shahr al-Hajj, and so on and so forth. There's sanctimonious things. And the word hurma in Arabic, woman, means that which is sacred. So women in Islam are sacred. They have to be protected. They have to be taken care of. They have to be, looked after. They have to be, you leave your father's house honored and taken care of, to your husband's house honored and taken care of, right? So we don't let our women just be taken advantage of by anyone in the Western world. And this whole Western idea of women are supposed to have jobs, they're supposed to have careers, they're supposed to have this, they're supposed to have that. Cool. If you want to have that, have that. Islam doesn't frown upon that. Islam doesn't say absolutely not, that is haram. No, there's lots of successful businesswomen in Islam. Khadija, the first wife of the Prophet ﷺ, was incredibly wealthy. She was an incredibly smart businesswoman. You know what I mean? So that's completely fine. You know what I mean? As long as the children are not neglected. So they think to be liberated from Islam is to go and dress up where you're exposing everything. Oh, look at these women in bags back in Saudi that are just dressed up like bags. Look at how liberated we are. Look at Las Vegas.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
How is that liberation? That's not liberation. That's the devil messing with you. What better way to humiliate someone than to remove their clothes, right? That's why God says, يُبْدِي لَهُمَا مَا وُرِيَ عَنْهُمَا مِنْ سَوْآتِهِمَا. Right? In Surah Al-A'raf, the heights, God says, that Satan had whispered to them. Satan had whispered to Adam and Eve, both of them, so that he could expose to them what was covered of their nakedness. Right? How would they do that? By disobeying God. right? So this whole and this is all an example, you know what I mean? That is how far the devil has gotten into people's minds to say that this is the idea of feminism. You have to have a career. You don't need no man. You're a strong, independent. It's all this small terminology that people just, they eat it up. They just think that this is everything. You know what I mean? Anyone that I would say is, really smart, they don't want to go out there and deal with the rest of the world. They don't want to deal with foreign policy. All you have to worry about is this little house. You know what I mean? That's all you got to worry about. You know what I mean? And that should be enough. You let the man take care of what's going on outside. Yes, a lot of men. Don't get me wrong. A lot of men, they shouldn't be in the positions that they are. And that's another sign at the end of times. Is that he said that you'll see someone in power that should not be in power. You know what I mean? I think it's very obvious what that means, So, this whole Western idea of feminism is what's going to destroy families, is what he's basically talking about. You know what I mean? It's that that's another sign of the end of times, that you'll see the woman wanting to go out. They don't need more money. They don't, the family household doesn't need more money. The man is providing, he's got money. But the woman, she doesn't care for the kids anymore. She wants to go out and have a career instead of paying attention to the children. She wants to go out and have a career instead of paying attention to her husband. You know what I mean? So the kids end up growing up lost, not knowing God. So that's another sign of the end of times. And we're seeing a lot more now, where a lot of people are not, the whole idea of family values is just unnecessary for people. The whole idea of marriage is unnecessary for people. And you see all of these, I'm going to be honest, you see all of these idiots going out on all these stupid podcasts and saying, it doesn't make sense for me. It doesn't make sense for me to do this. It doesn't make sense for me. And so what they're doing is they're corrupting the minds of young men and women to not get married. Right now, there's over 53% of women that are not married in the United States. Right, I'm just talking about the Muslim community. I don't know about the rest of the world. You know what I mean? I'm just talking about the Muslim community. The divorce rate is over 73%.
In the Muslim community?
This is a calamity in the Muslim community, right? And a lot of it stems from, according to statistics, a lot of it stems from women initiating it as well, because they have these ideas. A lot of them, again, I'm saying generally speaking, I'm not saying for everyone. Generally speaking, some of them they take these ideas, they take their thought process from these dumb podcasts. They take their ideologies from these people that are corrupt, that shouldn't even have a microphone in their mouth in the beginning. And they think that that's the guidance. That's not what guidance is. Guidance is right here. Guidance is the book of God. Guidance is what his prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has taught us. You know what I mean? And I guarantee, and again, there's always two sides to every story. I'm not saying that all men are innocent, because trust me, I've seen bad men. I've seen them. I've seen how corrupt some men can be. Right? So I'm not excusing that. The Chinese, they have a beautiful saying that they say that the truth is three. And there's your truth, my truth, and then the truth between us, right? So each person has a role to play, and if it's not being fulfilled, then you're not, then something has to be addressed. Something has to be looked at and taken into account as well. But yes, in terms of the signs of the end of times, this whole idea of feminism, is a sign of the end of times. So
that's very interesting. And so the reason why I'm just fascinated by this is because a lot of people would argue that Western feminism is in response, and you touched on this a little bit, but Western feminism would be in response to women not feeling cherished or treated fairly. But that also reminded me of in the Quran, when speaking of how to treat a woman, it says clearly, and I believe it was I want to say it was in the third surah. It was saying that you must treat a woman fairly. You must treat, but yeah, I think that's what it referred to. So what I find interesting is I don't necessarily disagree. I think it's kind of like a cause and effect type thing. I think that the family structure that is embedded in Islam makes sense of, okay, women are natural nurturers. Women naturally are, that's just how we're built. We are naturally nurturing, and we have that maternal instinct and things like that. And men are they're physically stronger. It would make sense that they would be in a position of protection of the woman and their family, or his family. And it would also make sense why, because of that, because he has this role of protection, he would be in charge of just that, protecting the family, making sure the family is fed, making sure the family is, has a roof over their head, and so on and so forth. Do you think because I love having dialogue like this. So for people in the comments, this is what real dialogue looks like. You don't have to, I think people are so used to people going at each other's throats. I see they're trying to. Yeah, I think people are so used to just discourse happening. But would you also say that music in modern times, I wasn't talking to you, music in modern times had a direct effect on the devaluing of women, which can then lead to perhaps that catalyst effect? Like, for instance, we're hearing, like you mentioned earlier in podcasts, people talking about things like polyamory and how marriage just doesn't work, or we're moving to just like this whole new idea of relationships, and things like that are becoming far more accepted. I don't know. I just feel like it's a domino effect. I think there was a spark that sort of led to our generation, like the younger generation, of just disrespecting each other between men and women. And that has led to, instead of working together and using our strengths in a way that makes sense, which that does make sense. If women are nurturing, if men are physically powerful, they would be the protectors, women would be taking care of the family. Do you think, now that we're reaching this sort of thing, that has given birth to the whole movement of women saying, well, we don't need men at all anymore, and we could do everything ourselves, and that's what's kind of toppling everything?
Firstly, before I answer that question, it's a very beautiful question, by the way. And I can't wait to answer it. Firstly, I want to say something. You mentioned that in the Quran, God, highlights, in sort of the Nisa, how to treat women, and that's very clear. It's very obvious. But even the Prophet ﷺ, if we just examine his life, I think that is the example that every man should be following. And I say this because, you asked the question, how do you know all of this stuff by heart? It's because I don't take my religion from this, She was actually yelling at him. She was yelling at her husband. She was yelling at the Prophet. And her father came and he heard, he was coming to visit them, and he heard her yelling at the Prophet, oh God, although, he's her husband, and so he came and he was about to kind of jump on her, how dare you yell at the Prophet? And the Prophet was like, whoa, hold on, where do you think you're going? You know what I mean? He stopped, he came in between his, his father-in-law and his wife. You know what I mean? What do you think you're gonna do? You know what I mean? And so Abu Bakr ended up leaving afterwards. And then the Prophet was like, you see what I did there? You see how I jumped in and I protected you? You know what I mean? And so they started laughing.
Yeah.
He's like, like, I got this, you know what I mean? Like he was kind of joking around with her. And so Abu Bakr came back and he's like, he sees them laughing, like 5 seconds ago she was trying to pull your hair out. Now you guys are laughing, like what's going on? He's like, Ya Rasulullah, ashrikan. He says, allow me to partake in your peace talks, just like you guys, involved me in your war. Right? And he's like, you're already a part of it anyways. You know what I mean? So, but you see, like he understood. Like sometimes, she would have these moments where she would get upset and stuff. That's completely fine, you know. Another time, I could go on about the Prophet and how he dealt with his wives. It's the most beautiful thing to me, honestly. There's this other time where, the Prophet was sitting between two of his wives. One of them was Aisha, another one was Zainab, and you know one of them was like, I'm not going to eat. And then Aisha was like, eat. And she goes, I'm not going to eat. Eat. And the Prophet is just kind of like sitting there in between them, just kind of smiling. And so between them, it got heated. She's like, either you eat. Aisha was like, either you eat or I'm going to smear this all over your face and I'm going to make you eat. Right? And so she's like, what are you going to do? Like, and the Prophet starts laughing a little. He's just kind of like, smiling like this, and so she didn't do it. So Aisha she actually smeared it all over her face. And he's like, you gonna let her disrespect you like that? In other words, take your right back from her. So then she started smearing it all. Yeah, no, he wasn't like instigating. He's just like, take your right from her. Like how well, you're gonna really let her do that to you? You know what I mean? So, and that's, he turned like a tense situation into a funny situation. He recognized people's states. That's how he was. He dealt with people as they are. And another beautiful thing is a man came to Umar ibn Khattab, aside from the Prophet. He came to Umar ibn Khattab. He was known as the Prince of Amir al-Mu'mineen at that time. And he knocked on the door, and then when Umar came, the guy ended up walking away, but Umar came to the door and he answered the door, and the guy was like, what's up? Umar was like, what's up? And he's like, no, never mind. He's like, no, tell me what's going on. He's like, forget it. It's all good. He's like, listen, you came all the way over here. He's like, I'm asking you by God. You came all the way over here to ask me something. What is it? And he said, well, I was actually coming here to complain about my wife, but when I heard that your wife was yelling at you, I was like, it can't be that bad. So he says, she takes care of my children. She takes care of my house. She takes care of me. She's allowed to. You know what I mean? In other words, like, it's fine. Like, people are human beings. They're gonna have these kind of moments and stuff like that. That's completely fine. One of my more favorite of the ahadith is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, "Istawsu bin nisa'i khayran." He's like, take care of your women in the most beautiful way. Like, this is a favor. This is a command from the Prophet, and it's also a favor, right? Istawsu bin nisa'i khayran. Take care of your women in the most beautiful and elegant way. فَإِنَّ الْمَرْأَ خُلِقَتْ مِنْ ضِلْعٍ. Because the woman, she was created from the rib, right? Like her source material, she was created from the rib. Like Eve was created from the rib of Adam, right? وَإِنَّ أَعْوَجَ الضِّلْعِ أَعْلَاهُ. The most crooked part of the rib is the highest part of it, like right here, right? So if you're gonna try to straighten it out, what's gonna happen? فَإِن كُنْتَ تُقِيمَهُ كَسَرْتَهُ. You're gonna break it, right? And if you leave it the way it is, لم يزل أعوج. If you leave it the way it is, it's going to stay like that. It's going to stay crooked. فَاسْتَوْصُوا بِالنِّسَاءِ خَيْرًا. So take care of your women in the most best way, in the most beautiful way, right? So in other words, this is how she is, right? This is how she is.
That's so sweet. I'm not crying. Okay. That one hit me. That was really sweet. That was really sweet. Oh my goodness. So I'm open to, because I know we've we've been on for almost like an hour and a half now, but I was wondering if you would be open to seeing if anyone in the audience had any questions that might be interesting.
I'm down. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
You ask the questions, I'm here to answer. That's my job today.
So for those who are still watching, does anybody have any questions? Prophet Muhammad is a romantic person.
Yes.
Peace be upon him. I'm finding that out more and more as people have been telling me his stories and I've been reading his stories. I'm really starting to see the romantic side, for sure. Let me see. Wasn't the explanation beautiful? And he was just one after another. Like at first I was like, oh, that's a yeah. But let me see. Can you be on YouTube? Who is that for, honey? Because Abostani has a YouTube, correct? I'm right about that, right?
Yeah. I'm waiting for it to reach 1,000 subscribers, and I'm gonna start dropping some knowledge. I'm gonna start dropping some mics over here.
All right. So we have 8.1 thousand people watching right now. So I believe your @ is the same @ as here, right? Go over there. Go over and subscribe.
It's the same thing.
You saw him dropping the knowledge this entire Q&A. All these beautiful stories. What book is best to read on the life of Prophet? So that was for you. I wouldn't know that.
There's lots of books that we could read. Really, there's lots of sources that we could take a look at. I would really recommend Dr. Yasir Qadi. He has a very beautiful series on YouTube of the Seerah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That's a very beautiful one. I'm gonna have to apologize. I don't have too many English books. Most of my books are, well, 95% of my books are Arabic. So, unless you understand sophisticated Arabic, I would recommend that. I would also recommend Riyadh al-Salihin. Riyadh al-Salihin is good because it has a lot of little snippets of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's life and stuff like that. And it's easy to go through. It's made for all of us, So I would highly recommend that as well.
Someone said, tell her about the necklace of Aisha when they broke up, or when it broke up.
Oh, that's a beautiful story, man. That was a beautiful story. Yeah. Okay. So one time, so there's like certain endeavors, like expeditions, military expeditions that the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would go on sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you take one wife, another time you take another wife, and so on and so forth. So this one time in particular, the whole army had stopped, and they had ran out of water and they had ran out of food, and they were about to keep going because they had to get somewhere because they're all thirsty,
Mm-hmm.
But Aisha, she kind of came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she's like, I lost my necklace. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he stopped the entire army, and he's like, we're not going to move an inch until we find it. And they ended up finding it, and yeah, her father was really upset with that. It's like, how dare you? He's like, no. He's like, it's not up to you. We're not moving until we find her necklace. So.
Y'all men need to step it up. Like, can you stop an army to find my necklace? Then I'm not interested.
And it's awesome because they're all thirsty and they're all already agitated. They're in a state of war. Their minds are going everywhere. He's like, we're not doing anything. We're not moving an inch until we figure it out. So now, however, oh, you lost your water bottle? Tough cookies, You
lost your water bottle? I know you did because I stole it. Like that's more. It's more accurate.
That's too good, man. That is too good. Yeah. No, it's a very beautiful story. He's just the way he was. There's this beautiful book. It's in Arabic. I was thinking of inshallah once I get some of these projects off the line for me. Once I put I'm putting together a course on the responsibilities and the rights of marriage. Inshallah, that's going to start dropping after the new year. I was thinking after I figure out all of these little projects that I want to do. Yeah, I know. It's very interesting because a lot of people, they say, this is the right of the man, and then that's it. This is the right of a woman, and then that's it. They don't really explain why it's their right,
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of took it upon myself to explain why it's a right and why, like, I really go through it. It's not something that can be, like, explained within a small 60-page book. It's a lot of work that went into it. But inshallah, after that, I really wanna translate. There's this book that's called Tuhfat al-Arus, the bliss of the bride in Arabic, right? It's called the bliss of the bride, and it explains rights in marriage. It explains responsibilities in marriage, and it the commentary on a lot of these things of how the Prophet just like once you open it, you'll never want to put it down. Like it's such a sweet book. Don't tell me about The Notebook. Don't tell me about all these other romantic comedies. This right here, I would highly recommend any young man that wants to get married. I want to translate that book to make it accessible to everyone. Honestly, it is such a beautiful book. I think that's going to be my next project, inshallah.
Oh, that's beautiful. So. And tell everybody about your first book because that is already on Amazon. I checked.
Yeah, I also I'm working with a publisher. They're going to publish the book as well and going to have it, easily available for everyone, inshallah, God willingly.
Nice.
So.
And your first book was The Seeker's Etiquette. Is that correct?
Yeah, The Seeker's Etiquette. So I wrote that one because a lot of people today, they're coming to knowledge. They're coming to knowledge, and they're coming to people of education, like real religion, as like just a quick fix. We've all heard that I've done my research. Well, what have you done my research? Where have you done it? I looked it up on Google. Okay, that's not that's the quick answer. No. Knowledge is something that's, if you give it all of you, if you sacrifice all of yourself to knowledge, it's going to give you a little bit of it. And if you give it nothing, it'll abandon you, right? So knowledge is a very, very important thing, and you have to have etiquette when you're seeking it. You can't come to knowledge with this sense of, I got this, you know what I mean? I've done my research and I'm going to ask this person about it. Well, if you want to ask this person about it, it means you're not looking for their opinion. You're looking to debate with them. You know what I mean? So I'm not here to debate with anyone. I'm here to answer questions. If you want to ask them, I'm more than happy to do that, because the question is the answer to the question is the key to the answer. It's the key to the treasure chest of the answer. So, but there's lots of books that I really want to work on, and there's lots of ideas that I really want to do. I just hope God gives me enough time on this earth to do so.
Yeah, and I'm sure that He will. He is the all merciful after all. So I know you were a very busy man, and you were gracious enough to spend an hour and 30 minutes. For those of y'all in the audience, please, please, please go follow this brother on all of his social media, including YouTube. Get his subscriber count up past 1,000 so that he could start dropping that knowledge. And keep an eye out for the books that he already has, the books that are coming out. And I would actually love to hold one of these sessions again. I think we had fun. But that's just on my side. I don't know about you, but
I'm down. I had a lot of fun. Your questions are amazing. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you.
Let me know. Let me know. If anything, let's do something on Monday. If you're down, let's do something on Monday. So tomorrow I'm
Monday's
going to be
perfect.
busy. Friday I'm traveling to Carbondale.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Saturday I'm going to be in Carbondale. So if anyone is going to be in the Carbondale area, Illinois, or whatever areas that are around that, come through. I put the flyer up on my social media. But Monday, inshallah, I'll be back, and if you want, we'll do something then.
That's perfect. So y'all keep an eye out for an